Usually this is a two-man show. My colleague Stefan Budo, who's the principal consultant for Azure at Fusion5. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today, so you've got me. Usually we have a pretty good banter between us. He starts a joke, I finish it off, everybody laughs. I start a joke, he finishes it off, everyone laughs. So if I start something that doesn't resonate, just laugh anyway, because it would have been funny if he was here, trust me on that. All right. They went down a little bit better in Auckland, I'm just saying. So my name's Daniel Apps. I'm a principal consultant / solutions specialist for Azure Hybrid or Hybrid Cloud at Fusion5. Have a hybrid role, love hybrid cloud, everything's hybrid. No, I'm not going to sell you a Camry, or try to, unless you want one. So it's Prius territory around here, I've noticed, in the Uber's world. But look, bear with me, and we're going to talk about everything hybrid cloud today. Firstly, I come from the Enterprise Cloud and Security team, ECS as we call ourselves. My colleague Trav will be up a little bit later to talk about some other things around modern work, around security, but I'm going to talk to you about infrastructure, and that's our favorite part of cloud, right? It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. All right, how long have I got, Gareth? Right, okay, this is going to be fun. Right, so we'll get on for the ride. So firstly, does anyone know what Azure is? Can I get a show of hands? Get that blood flowing after lunch. Couple of hands. Is anybody using Azure in in organizations? A few less hands. About the same amount of hands. Okay, cool. Look, just a level set to make sure we sort of all understand what I'm talking about. I'm not just making up this word. Obviously, I don't make it up because we get cool jackets, right? So, Microsoft Azure, essentially, it's a cloud platform. Now, if we think about it from the perspective of, in our businesses, we have things like, we have racks of stuff with lights and spinning wheels, spinning disks, and all this kind of thing to produce services, to produce files, to produce applications, to serve those to the business. So cloud is essentially grabbing those services and making them available from a larger scale and consumed as a service. So think about things like your file server, think about the databases that you're using, the applications where you do your timesheet. There's some of the stuff that we were talking about today, F&O and whatnot, they're all essentially cloud services. Azure is a collection of, I think it's actually 300, it says 200 up there, so that's a Microsoft quote. Forget that, it's just marketing. But I think it's up to over about 300 odd services now that you can consume at the click of a button and at essentially no entry cost, but just pay for as you go. Think of it as kind of like instead of going to the Woolworths or Coles or Safeway, or sorry, what's it over here, buying all your ingredients, putting them together and making a dinner, you're just jumping on Uber Eats or ringing up a takeaway and you're getting it delivered to you as a service. It's kind of like that. You dial and consume as to what you need. It also enables organizations that might have not had the budget, the skills, the facilities to leverage some of those enterprise scale services and consume them at a smaller tick rate, run a POC, work out if that's good for them, and then start consuming them in the business, rather than going, hey, we need 200 grand to go and deploy this big, highly available SQL database, amazing whiz-bang thing. We can consume that at a couple of bucks a month, scale that up to suit our needs, and scale it back down once our needs reduce. So that's kind of that's a bit of a high level on cloud. One thing that we'll focus on is many organizations that we work with. There's a lot of things around security these days. A lot of focus on security. We talk about accreditations, certifications. Is my data secure? Are my services secure, etc. These hyperscalers, as they're called, Azure and we don't have any Microsoft people in the room, so I can say this. The AWSs, the Googles, and whatnot. They've got these large installations, so they've actually got the budget and the bandwidth to go and get accreditations that are well beyond that most SMB or even medium large businesses can go and achieve, and keep those up to date. So we know that they're doing everything they can to make sure it's secure, encrypted. All the facilities are locked down. People are checked. Processes are in place, etc., etc. So we know that it's secure. But then we've got Azure specifically has 72 regions around the world. We're going to focus on our special part of the world, the APAC region here. But you might notice something there that in the lovely New Zealand, we don't have a solid dot yet. In Australia, we've got data centers, because we've got data centers in Australia. We don't have the Bledisloe, so it's all right. But there's one lighting up in Auckland next year. So that introduces challenges around connectivity, the distance between me and my data. Might be sovereignty rules, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these challenges I'll talk to a little bit later. But that is coming. It's in Auckland. And if that one's successful, I'd imagine that they'd probably expand down to one in South Island. That'll probably, I think the word on the street is Microsoft say sometime in 2024. As far as I know, which I don't really know, I'll make it up as I go. Expecting it to sort of be around sort of mid-year next year. So just if you're interested. So from the Fusion5 robotics, we've got shirts as well. So I've got jackets from Microsoft Azure, and I've got shirts from Fusion5. We want to embark on our cloud journey, but just what challenges do we have? What challenges are we facing? So we've talked about already. So we've got those key services in cloud. So we've talked about some of those databases, some of these application services, some of these fancy widgets that we can go and consume, but they're all in cloud. And as we noticed from the previous slide is, there's a big gap between where these clouds live versus where my facilities might be. So I've got geographical constraints around, might be latency, or it might be that I have an application that sits on my production line and continues to run. And if I have any disconnection from those cloud services, then I can't continue to run my production line or my distribution facility. So I can't actually leverage those clouds because it becomes too much of a risk. So those key services in cloud, that's some of the challenges I got there. I've also got around data sovereignty and governance. So kind of leans into the same sort of thing where we talked about, it's those clouds are in Australia. So there might be regulations around your industry to keep them within your four walls, to keep them within your town, to keep them within your country. So you've got challenges that you need to meet there. Also, you don't know where your data's, you might have regulations around where your data lives. So you just need to be careful around that. So I need to think about those kind of things when I'm and taking on cloud. Another thing is we've talked about all these fun stuff, these widgets and databases and gizmos that are available in cloud. But the thing is, where's the skills? I'm making robotics, T1000s or whatever the other robots we're making. I'm making all these. That's my business. That's where I'm trying to drive the value. I'm not a cloud business. I'm not employed cloud architects and engineers. So if I go into cloud, am I going to do it correctly? Am I going to have the right people to ensure that I'm not making mistakes, poking holes in my environment, and ensuring that I'm doing it optimally without having massive cost blowouts, etc. So there's a skills challenge. There's an upskill or a side skill or a resource availability there. We sort of I probably should swap these two around. Actually, it would have made sense there. But we talked about the production line around. I have production line facilities, so I've got production lines flowing, I've got labels being printed, I've got trucks going out the line, I've got stock being moved around, work orders being printed, all these kind of things. And I've got these legacy applications, the bartenders, the nice labels, the et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure that you've all got your own examples of these kind of applications, but I've got these applications, they need to be close to my production line, close to my distribution, close to my workers that need to be able to print out their labels or scan the production line as it goes to enable the next part of the production line to ensure that if things go dark, if I lose an internet connection, then I can continue to produce my product. So, but I need to have those applications. Problem is, those applications were provided by vendor X and implemented by person Y, and so they don't generally meet the security posture or security considerations that I've applied at my office level. So I don't have any encryption. I've got silos of usernames and passwords. I've got data, my schematics, my recipes, my et cetera, sitting out on the edge of my networks, available for people to come and take that data. Or if I don't know if you've heard the term assume breach. It's gone are the days where we consider our networks, with a firewall and nobody can get past it. We've kind of take this posture of assume breach. So if somebody's inside my environment, they can actually snoop around and get access to my data as well. Because those legacy systems that are out there, whilst they're doing the bit and the printing the label or scanning the production line, they're not actually meeting those requirements that I need, that I'm protecting, like my sales stuff inside the organization, which Trav will give good examples to later. But I need to run those. I need to keep those running. Which leans into the security risks challenge. But then I've also got multiple facilities. So then I've got on production line over in facility A, and I've got a production line over in facility B, and I've got different technologies deployed there. I've got different skills. I've got different people running this. So I've got this, not only this technical debt in each environment, I've also got this management overhead of staff doing things differently, trusting their methodologies, trusting their processes, and also doubling that. So I've just got a blowout of sort of costs and risks all over the place. So how do we handle all this? It's a great question. I'm genuinely here to ask, how do I handle all this? I got, no? If Steph was here, he would have made that way more funny than I would have. I'm going to introduce you to the Fusion5 Robotics, Azure or hybrid cloud strategy. So what does that mean? That means essentially we're going to use a cloud platform, Microsoft Azure, because we get cool jackets. We're going to use Microsoft Azure to provide a single management plane across my facilities. I can modernize my existing legacy applications, modernize my existing infrastructure in my facilities, consolidate those, bring down the cloud security tools and methodologies, but also continue to run my facilities as they are. I can also start to bring down those cloud services. So I might want to leverage a widget or a database or whatever it might be in cloud as a POC, prove that works. But then I can grab those services and bring those down to my facility. So if I do have that geographical challenge of the different continents, or if an internet connection goes down, or Jim the forklift driver drives through a bit of cable, my production line continues to run, but I'm leveraging some of those cloud services. Right? Also, it allows me to extend to the edge, which means Paul's already given examples earlier around I have sensors on my production line, I can look at temperatures and those kinds of things, keep them going for the critical stuff locally, but then I can send that data, that IoT, Internet of Things data, up to the cloud, put it in a big database somewhere, a low cost, low performance database, but then start to have a look at that data and try and extrapolate some information that I otherwise might not have had access to or realized, etc. So that's our hybrid cloud strategy. So am I actually doing this right? Is this the right thing to do? With everything, as we can see up here, 43% of statistics are made up on the spot. But with the doubt that it brings to my environment is I go, well, am I doing this right? Am I embarking on an architecture or a roadmap that's kind of backing myself into a corner? Am I doing the right things? Statistics, numbers, Gartner, all that kind of stuff. But what it's telling me is that the majority of organizations out there, they're all adopting a hybrid cloud strategy, meaning that you're not just going to pick up everything and dump it in cloud, meaning they're not going to keep all cloud away, meaning that whatever suits their business, we adjust the dial under that hybrid cloud strategy, know that, well, I can continue to run my stuff today, but I can leverage the cloud of the future. So seems to be that's the way that the businesses are traveling. So, okay, great. So cool. My hybrid strategy is aligning to sort of where the industry is going, not just in manufacturing, but across the board. It addresses the challenges I have around the geographical issues, the distance, the latency, the potential outages without the internet. It addresses my governance and security considerations. So, great, cool, awesome strategy. How did we implement this? Firstly, we went to our facilities and we consolidated and modernized our platforms across our facilities, brought down cloud. So we've got the Azure platform, bring that down and deploy that into our cloud, into our facilities. We can then grab our legacy applications, our nice labels, Bartender, Fusion, maintenance experts, trying to think of the various things I've used over the time, and bring those in their existing form onto this platform. That means that I can bring the security and governance from cloud to there. So I've got encryption, I've got a consistent security role-based access posture. I'm bringing a modernized platform, knowing that it's got future-proofed as far as support and feature roadmap goes. But I'm also not disrupting what I do now. I'm continuing my production lines, producing what I need to produce to continue churning my dollars. So I've modernized, but I've kept things going. The next step is I can start to leverage cloud services at my own pace, on my terms. I can either bring a cloud service from the certain portfolio, bring that down and run that on-prem, or I could actually test that in Azure Cloud, spin up a database, a couple of cents here, a couple of cents, it's more than a couple of cents, it's Microsoft here, they're a multi-trillion-dollar company, it's not more than a couple of cents. But a couple of dollars here, a couple of dollars there, test, does this application work? Might be an example of pulsing where we had the temperature being managed, monitored in there. I might send that data up and then have a little widget in cloud, we call it a function, that it goes, okay, anytime this hits a certain threshold, go and do a bunch of things. Cool, I can leverage that. But if I lose my connectivity, I can't do that. That's not going to work anymore. I can bring that service, this function, I can bring that down into my facility so I can then start to do those kinds of things offline, if we call it, or close to my facility without risk of outages. Okay. Allows me to test cloud services, work out if they're actually working, if that's right for me, do a POC with application vendor, and then go, yep, this works, great, cool, let's grab that application and bring that down and start deploying it to our facility. So I'm starting to consume cloud on my own terms without having to revolutionize anything. I've then brought myself a single pane of glass, whereas I can use the Azure portal, because it's a global service. So as we said, there's 72 regions around, soon to be 73 and 74, if you include Auckland and one of the other ones, I think in Europe. But it's a global platform, so I'm bringing that single pane of glass to my business. So I can have my IT department or my OT department, whatever you want to call them, sitting in location Y, and my facilities are out in the regional areas. They're using this single pane of glass to manage those facilities. There's a really good question in there. There's a test if you're paying attention to where that question comes up later. What is it? Any questions now? No? Are we falling asleep? No? A few smiles? Okay. All right. But having a new modernized platform, consistent platform, I mean, it streamlines my supportability and my operability. Okay. All without disrupting the way that I do things. Now, I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here. I want to keep this high enough level that I'm not putting you to sleep intentionally. But I'm going to talk about something which Chrissy talked about earlier, around something called Kubernetes. Now, if we think of essentially, if we think of Kubernetes as basically, it's a way of delivering applications where they just strip out all these variables underneath, and they only have the core piece of that application running on this standardized platform. Now, what do I mean by that standardized platform? Meaning Kubernetes is standardized across not only Microsoft Azure, yes, but also across Google, across AWS, across other service providers, but also across the Azure hybrid environment at the edge of your facility. So what does that mean? That means if I'm developing an application or a process or a service, and mind you, there's actually more application vendors these days are actually delivering their applications via something called a container, but basically used to, it's what Kubernetes runs. So more application vendors are delivering applications in this method rather than going, hey, here's your thing, go and install it and spend 150 grand, 3 months to build it. And so they're delivering it in this lightweight service. So what does that mean? Is if I'm running that Kubernetes services in Azure Cloud across one of those 72 regions, I can scale that wherever I go. If I'm an international company or global, I can scale it to the closest region to me. But I can also bring that down to my facility. So I can run that same application on the edge or inside my manufacturing distribution facility. But then one day if I wake up and I go, you know what, I don't like Microsoft's cloud offering or their prices anymore, I can potentially take that application and that modeling and take that to another cloud or scale to where a Microsoft region might not be. You're always going to run Azure in your data center because that's what we do, right? Yeah. Tough crowd. Right. But it allows me to go down a technology path that doesn't back me into a corner. I mean, look, everything we do is going to have an expiry date at some stage. But it kind of avoids some of that vendor lock-in. But the beautiful thing about using the Azure hybrid model is I can deliver that consistently to my facilities without having to completely revolutionize the way I do it. Cool, we're going to go out and build everything in Kubernetes now? Awesome, great. Cool, Dan, this sounds all amazing. It does, really, it's amazing. I can see everybody's going to go out and do a whole learning exercise in Kubernetes now. But what does that mean for my business? Give us an example, give us something tangible. So Chrissy touched on this earlier about predictive maintenance. So we have our production line here, and we might have a scanner sitting there with an IoT device, which is basically just watching the production line, and it grabs the data and sends that to somewhere. It sends it to a database sitting on my HCI, so my database, my server sitting in the facility, sends it to there, real time, continues to capture it. Okay, all within the facility. This is all within the same facility, not going across the internet or anything. And then I'm applying some AI modeling, so some machine learning algorithms to actually look at that data. And I go, cool, let's start evaluating that data. But what we're also doing is we're connecting this service, connecting it to our maintenance experts database, which no one's maintenance experts is. Does anyone have that in their facilities? Basically, and I'm going to get this wrong, no one's here knows about it, so great, I can make up whatever I like. But basically, it's an asset register for all the parts and components you need to repair your facilities. That's as far as I know. So what it's doing is actually looking at maintenance experts and goes, hey, we've got this particular device, and we need these shims, these washers, these flux capacitors. Do you have these in stock? Cool. No, we don't. We're missing a couple of wedges. Cool. What we're going to do is we're going to create an alert, send that to the production manager. Go, hey, production manager, we think that this production line is going to start going down, and you need to have these parts. Do you want us to ship up an order to the vendor to order the widgets for you? Yes, no. Cool. So that's just an example of one there. Another one would be, we've got, I'm going to totally butcher this. You're thinking, geez, this guy's been butchering this whole session. I'm totally butcher this. So my mate Stefan, with his sort of Belgian Aussie accent, it's the most bogan European you've ever met. He's awesome. But he would tell a story about Kevin, who would wander through the production line. There would be these no-goes. So we'd have this camera monitoring this area, and then Kevin would go into this area, and I'd go, okay, cool. We're starting to work out that there's an issue here. So then it sends an alert to the operations manager saying, hey, Kevin's been walking into this zone. He's done it twice now. Okay, cool. Let's go down and have a chat to him. Cool. Next day, Kevin does it again. Alerts the operations manager and also alerts the HR. Cool. Starts a process there. They go, hey, here's your final warning. And then the next day, he does it again. Kevin, sorry, boom, you're out the door. Thanks, Kevin. No good to you. So we're using cameras to capture that data. I think we're going to see a demonstration later about how I'm not just making this all up, not all of it. But we're going to see a little demo later towards the end of Troy's session about a camera and how it can actually look at this kind of stuff and extrapolate some data. So we're using that camera, generic cameras, grab the data, sending off to create a workflow to actually help me reduce risk in my facilities. And that's just not, making Excel run faster. This is actually providing true value to my environment. Not producing widgets faster, this is also bringing safety standards, increasing safety standards. So increasing the posture of my organization, safety posture. That's pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. All right. So Azure Hybrid. So what have we learned so far? So by adopting this hybrid strategy, it's allowed me to be ready for the future. It's allowed me to continue running what I run now. It's allowing to continue producing what I produce now. My business continues to make money. But it also allows me to be future ready to go, you know what, I've upped my posture, but allows me to start leveraging the future at my own pace. And by my own pace means when I'm ready to start consuming, when on my application portfolio, I might have signed a lease or a service term on this particular application for a period of time, but then once that sort of comes to its end, you go, hey, we need to rethink about how we're doing this. This application vendor might have different ways of delivering it. So I can then start to consume that at my own pace when I'm ready. Operate seamlessly. I think we've already established that we can run these facilities locally, keeping our business going, where if we lose connectivity to the internet or if I'm multi-region, multi-site, multi-geo, I can do this consistently without revolutionizing the way I'm doing things. And the last piece is I can do it securely. I know, we saw earlier with the where was it? There. There's no way, a lot of these are global, so I imagine that no organization is going to have these, but there's no way, I think there's one for New Zealand, GCIO, but there's no way that many of these organizations that you work for are going to have more than maybe one of these accreditations which is specific to your industry. So it means that my infrastructure, my data, is running on a platform that I know is secure and it's got its accreditations and due diligence. So I guess that takes me to the most important one to see if you were paying attention. I'm going to pick on someone randomly here. I'm joking.